Convince Me podcast, where we are on a mission to convince you to step out of your gaming comfort zone and try something new. With that said, let's get to convincing. Last week, we had a Convince Me to Go Back episode where Darren and I convinced each other, or attempted to convince each other to play Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, and Doom 3. I think it was one of those things where we were kind of like, it's hard to go back to games that are of their time when we have better things now, but there are definitely games that hold up, and I think that Convince Me to Go Back is more so about our search for games that we never played to see if they still hold up. And my verdict for Doom 3, which is what I played, was that it holds up very well, fluid movement and all those other things, and I think, according to what Darren said, Legacy of Kain also holds up fairly well with modern trappings. This week, I am going to be convincing Darren to try The Altars, and Darren will be convincing me to try Raji, the Ancient Epic, both of which are on Game Pass. Now, normally we have Raji. Where did Raji come from? PS
That's
Plus?
PlayStation Plus.
PS Plus. I apologize. So Darren's came from PS Plus. Mine is Game Pass. Mine was a day one release that released not that long ago, actually. And this is the segment where we go over question of the week just to get our conversational juices flowing. But I don't know what it is this week. This is Darren's party, and I'm curious to see what is happening.
I wanted a very organic approach to this question
Sure.
because it is a bit of a broad thing, and it's probably gonna require a bit of thought.
Okay.
But Ryan, we have been playing games for God, what, 25 years?
For me,
30
30,
years?
because I had older brothers who had consoles, yeah.
Yeah, and 30, probably not quite 30 for me, but like 28, 29 is pretty daggone close.
Yeah.
Um, in all that time, there are obviously some phenomenal memories that have been made.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to know this week is, what is your all-time biggest gaming disappointment?
There are a few that come to mind, but like when you think disappointment, you're just like heart sinking. Like I'm I feel bad about this
So it
because
depends. So it can either be something that you were like really excited for and it just blew ass. Or it could be something that was really, really good, like a game that was fantastic for 85% of it, and it just absolutely dropped the bag.
okay, so before it became like a pretty big series, because you saying that pretty much jogged my memory of where I want to go. It's fairly recent, although depends on how you look at it. In the gaming landscape, it's not. But like, um, when I had a PS3, PS4 hadn't been out yet. There was this game that just popped up. I don't even remember how or why I saw it, but it was called Mafia 2. So, Mafia 2 is an incredible game. Oh no, it was a demo. Yes, I remember. I think it was either Xbox or PS3 had a demo that you could try the game. And so I tried this demo, and it was this 1950s, 60s vibe. Might have been 40s. I cannot remember. And the demo had me hooked. And I was like, I gotta get this game. So, I got the game when it came out later. Loved it. A few years down the road, I get a Game Informer magazine that tells me that there is a game called Mafia 3 in the making. I played Mafia 2, didn't even know that Mafia 1 existed. I still hadn't even played it at this point. But I'm like, yes, bet Mafia 3. The story of Mafia 2 was awesome. Felt like a true mobster game. You had those high points of like the Goodfellas and Godfather. All like you had those points of like this is awesome. I love this. Mafia 3 comes out and it starts off with a banger with these incredibly mo-capped and voice acted and emotional scenes talking about this dude from the military, talking about the pro tag. And Darren was there when I first started playing it, and I think Darren, you would agree that the way it was presented in the opening of this game was cinema. You felt engaged in what this game is about to throw at you. And it stayed consistent. The story stayed consistent. And then you get to the part of the game where you have to play the game, and the missions that you're doing in the opening are pretty cool. And then you get more cutscenes. Awesome. Great story. Then you get to a point in the game where you have to try and take over the city, and the game falls apart. Because all the game is do these same repetitive missions to unlock the next cutscene or story beat. Alright, that's done. Move on to another part of the city and do more of the repetitive same missions, side quests, and all these other things. And that's all it is for however many hours. And this incredible story is locked behind mindless, repeating quests and missions. And it's so saddening because the story was so good from what I saw. And unluckily, I never finished it because I didn't care about doing the same missions over and over again just to get to this really good story. And I will be forever sad that this story was locked behind such rinse and repeat nonsense that it really didn't need.
So, for me, I want to give some honorable mentions before I get into my topic. Big ones include Mass Effect 3. Specifically the ending of Mass Effect 3. I think that at any time, if a studio has to release additional content to give players more of the ending that's been 15 years in the making,
Mm-hmm.
that speaks ill, for sure. Um,
Andromeda, I would put up there, and that's your answer. Andromeda
yeah, it's
also.
it's not, but Andromeda does belong in there,
Mass
certainly.
Effect Andromeda, to be specific for those who don't know what we're talking about.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Anime video games deserve honorable mentions. I'll never understand how game studios can take titles that have so much source material, like IPs with more source material than pretty much anything ever, and just turn them into
Arena fighters.
arena fighters. Or there was a Bleach game that basically just played like Dynasty Warriors and it wasn't good. And I just, and not to say that the Naruto arena fighters aren't
People love
okay. They love
Shining
a lot of them.
Yeah, they're pretty
They've
well
been around for
received.
a while. With obvious exceptions, of course, being Legacy of Goku for the Game Boy Advance, which was amazing, and
DB
The first two Budokais were phenomenal. It
DBZ gets
dropped
more
off.
love. Mm.
It does, but that's a genre that is made to be a fighting game for sure.
Well, Dragon Ball
Uh,
Fighters, great
if
time.
you like fighting games,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
I don't, but that's neither here nor there. But no, my ultimate gaming disappointment. Um, to this day, I will still like it still affects me in some way, strictly because of like what could have been, and that of course is the PlayStation Vita. And it's not to say that I think the console itself was a disappointment because I truly don't. But the fact that Sony would release something with absolutely no first party support, with no access to titles, and yet it could do so many incredible things on the back of, I mean, the PSP, the PlayStation Portable was one of the best handhelds that's ever been. I don't think that's really too subjective of a thing to say. And the Vita, I mean, the touchscreens in the
Say not wrong.
back, and let's see, that's the the Go. I
VSD Go
still
that
have
you
my
got me.
I still have my old ones somewhere. Um, I obviously still have my Vita as well, but I mean, Vita gave us a lot of great JRPG ports, right? So Persona 4 Golden, Tales of Hearts. It was the only way you could play Tales of Heart in America. Um, and yet they just had so much nothing on this
Like,
powerful handheld that could do so many things, that had an app interface on it. Like the UI on this thing was so cool because it was just like this series of bubbles. It was very much of its time. There's a term for the design style that it was. I ironically actually watched a YouTube video about it probably about a month and a half ago. You remember that time in like it's probably '06 to 12 where everything was like green and blue and very bubbly,
well,
and by bubbly I mean pertaining to bubbles.
PS3 when you were downloading a game, you saw like an image of the game in the
Hmm.
bubble. Yeah,
Well, I mean, but even think about, I guess it would have been Windows Vista, I guess, and then Windows 7 was very bubbly too. I don't know. There's literally like a whole word for that aesthetic. Um,
bubbly.
but it was so good, and it should have been so good, and it was, it was $250 I think at the time, so it wasn't cheap, and it just was nothing.
I've wanted a
Even
Vita.
though it was the first console that I can recall that could remote play your PlayStation 3.
Yeah,
You could remote play PlayStation 3 on a Vita at that time, which now seems like such a whatever burger, but in, you know, 2011, that was the coolest thing. And maybe it couldn't run everything well, but it could run it.
I wanted a Vita for the longest time because, granted, this would have been before my like JRPG
Oh, way
life
before.
switch.
Way before.
But like
I
now,
used to have to rip your teeth out to get you to play JRPGs.
that's like exclusively what I want to play.
Go
Well,
figure.
it's I don't know why, but I think it was a period before like I was a I have a gaming confession to make. I was a cutscene skipper for a very long time, very long time. Like cutscene, start X or start whatever it took to skip a cutscene. Boom, I was doing it. Metal Gear Solid, I would press X and then press triangle and then brrr, just all the dialogue just zip past. And it wasn't until I got a little older that I appreciated dialogue and appreciated character and appreciated story. But yeah, no, I've wanted a PS Vita, but when I think about it now, I'm like, what would I get it for? Most of the JRPGs that are on there have either been reported, remastered, or remade. I think a lot of them. So yeah, I think that is a fair assessment. Um, Man, PS Vita,
Oh yeah,
that's a good one.
no question. It really was. It should have been. It really is a case of what could have been.
I mean, in all fairness, I think the PS3 struggled for most of its life. So I think Sony was just dropping the ball across that because the PS3, once they price dropped it, sure, it got better because it was price dropped. But when it first came out, like you were looking at $600 for a console in 2006.
It was 800 if you wanted the 80 gig.
No. What?
I do believe. I believe the 20 gig was the 500 price point. I believe the 80 gig hard drive was $800 if my memory serves
No, it
me.
was five for the 20, six for the 60.
No, the 60 didn't come out at launch. It was the 20 and the 80.
I mean,
And the 60 then came out because back then the 80 had Wi-Fi support, but the 20 didn't. So you had to have a LAN cable that you could plug into it if you wanted any network connectivity features.
I'm not seeing any 80 gig on release. I'm seeing 60 and 20.
No, the 60 was not a release. It was very much an 80. And then they buried the 80 because no one was willing to buy it. dropped it down to a 60, put it at $100 more expensive than the 20, and then they started to get their sales numbers up. But the 80 was a massive flop.
Wait. So according to the Wikipedia article, it's Wikipedia. At launch, the PS3 was available with either 20 or 60 in the US and Japan, and with a 40, 60, or 80 in Europe. So the 80 was apparently only a Europe thing. I do recall though, and this was something that always made me jealous, was that the 20 gig was the only backwards compatible one.
The 80 gig was.
Really? Gosh, I'm all messed up. That was so long ago. But yeah, no, that was a crazy time for PlayStation. Like, I feel like, granted, I was only 16 at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't into like gaming like I am now. But I feel like that was such a bad hit for Sony, in so many ways. But I think with the PS4, they showed that they learned a little something when they came out with it. So, you know, you fall, you rise.
Mm-hmm.
But we are talking of disappointments, and now I have to ask you, Darren, was your game a disappointment?
Okay. So, not only was it not a disappointment, I found myself multiple times throughout thinking to myself, wait, it's still giving me more new things.
That's good. I like that.
I found multiple times the depth of this game truly caught me off guard in ways that its rating on the PlayStation Store would not have precluded.
What did it have on the
So
PS Store?
I think it's like a 3.5 stars, like a
Okay.
stark average 7 out of 10,
Wow. Okay.
right? Um, Before we get into that, though, my game for this week is Raji, an Ancient Epic by Nodding Heads Games. As far as I am aware, that is their only game, from what I could find. And it is a game that is fully devoted into Hindu mythology. Ryan, do you know much about Hindu mythology?
Like, if I were to be quizzed on it, I'm pretty sure I'd fail.
I can comfortably say that as well. But in the time that I spent with this game, I have become very irritated with the fact that there does not appear to be more games that draw from this source material.
Correct me if
Because
I'm
some of
wrong.
the stories, Asura's Wrath,
I was gonna say, I think Azura's Wrath is inspired by that. I think, right?
and loosely,
Okay.
loosely, but yes, um, but yeah, still drew from some of the inspiration. But some of the stories that were told in this game are so cool sounding, like in entire premises of deities who could have entire games made about them specifically in some way, shape, or form. So, all that is to say, I genuinely hope that somewhere along the line, more tasteful conceptualizations of Hindu storytelling and mythology become, I guess, more prevalent in the mainstream of
Sure.
just storytelling in general. But the game revolves around a girl named Raji, hence the title. She is a circus performer, and her little brother Golu, is the storyteller who uses kind of, it seems like, marionette type puppetry. All of the cutscenes in the game also are told by similar marionette esque puppetry. So there's a voiceover in the background as these characters who, like, think way back to when you'd have just like shadowy figures and little sticks that controlled them from underneath, as
Yeah. Yeah.
opposed to, I guess, marionettes from above. It's the stick puppetry from underneath,
Yep.
acting out each event that's happening in the story that's outside of the momentary cutscenes. So it is truly, it feels as though it is a story being told through, old tapestries or pottery paintings, things of the like, things that you would actually go to a performance to see those stories performed. which was redundant, but you know what I meant. Um, Very early on, the village where Raji and Golu are performing are attacked by demons, and Golu is taken away,
Oh
as
no.
with all of the village children, loaded up into a cart and being brought away. The village is burned. People look like they're getting absolutely wrecked by giant spiked hammer clubs. Um, and all of a sudden, these voiceovers come on, and they belong to the goddess Durga, and then of course Lord Vishnu.
I do
Vishnu, a
know.
name that is probably something that even those relatively ignorant to Hindu mythology have heard of, myself being one. And they are the narrators throughout the course of what I played. And you just proceed through this game, and your perspective is, of course, third person, largely isometric, largely side scrolling, but there are times where you can move like forward, backward, to interact with the depth of the map. I would say your perspective is not that dissimilar from games like Journey.
Mm. Okay.
Um, it is, however, more like 2D linear for the majority of how you interact with things. Um, and pretty quickly, you get given granted access to this. What do they actually call it? Hold on, I've got it pulled up here because I would never have remembered. A divine Trishula, which is a trident, from the goddess Durga. So I believe it's said that that is Durga's actual weapon. It is given to Raji to use to defeat the demons. And you get a couple combat tutorials, and the combat is pretty much square is your standard attacks, triangle is your standard attacks, but with like some type of energy component to it. So some ground slams, area of effect, mandalas appear underneath you. You swing and there's like wide arcing lightnings. There's almost like a sword beam cut that you do with the trident that can hit with a little bit of range. Um, and then there are interactions where you can walk up to poles, spin around them with either square or triangle, and either do a standard attack or an energy attack. And then there's actions where if there's a wall anywhere near the combat, you run up the wall, jump off, and interact with combat that way. So right off the bat, this game that is absolutely, I don't even know if I can in good faith call it double A. It might be single A. Indie studio giving you more depth of combat than a lot of games do now, where it's all about flash and pizzazz instead of like feeling good type of combat. The combat itself is also very difficult. Not Souls difficult by any stretch of the imagination, but if you want to button mash your way through combats, the the delay between your ability to perform combos or do any dodge rolling is, I would call it, realistic.
Sure.
And so if you just try to mash through, you are going to get punished. And these things do pretty fair amounts of damage, truth be told. Um, but like all things are doable. If you die, you pretty much just restart right at the beginning of the combat and you just keep going.
Sure.
Um, so I got about 3 hours into it, kind of moving forward in this way. Move through, go through some jump puzzles, platforming types of things. Go through, clear out a combat. There's some like little ground twisty puzzles that tell bits of Raji's backstory. Um, and then, as you approach the end of the first area, you end up acquiring a strange orb. Mind you, at this point, I'm probably somewhere between 3 and 5 hours in. So not a small amount of time for a game that doesn't just drop or that doesn't like load you up with tutorials and waste a lot of time talking. And all of a sudden, this orb unlocks a skill tree.
Yeah.
And so my basic attacks started to be able, with square and triangle, I believe, could use effectively chain lightning, where lightning would jump in between enemies. Or the attacks would call down lightning bolts onto people. Or if they were hit by lightning, they would have, stun frames for a while that would vary depending on what you were fighting. And each one of these skills you could slot 3 orbs into, and they got progressively more powerful. And then 2 more hours later, you get another weapon. So all of a sudden, you have a spear and a bow. And so, all of a sudden, here I am, 10 hours into this game, roughly, with
You
two
got that far
weapons,
in.
another weapon that I didn't even unlock yet, parts of this skill tree that I didn't even have access to. And I found that I played a lot more of this game than I had planned to, because
Nice.
the storytelling is something. Yeah, you could make the argument that mythological storytelling tends to follow similar cadence regardless of the mythos. Um, However, in the context of this, with some of the like paintings you could find of some of the other deities like Brahma, um, Asura, a couple others, I found that I was so interested in them that I would actually listen to the whole thing. And so I was compelled to continue forward because it's an entire series of stories that I've never heard before.
Hmm.
Right? There were stories about like Brahma, as I said. Um, there are like stories of Shiva. There's it's kind of dope. And then the game throws like deeper and deeper mechanics as far as how you can do combat, different things that you can do, you preferred fighting styles. Some of these fights were difficult. There were a couple boss fights that I did. The boss fights were thought provoking because you can't just button mash through them.
Sure.
And so I found myself very engrossed because there's no map, there's no mini map, there's no obvious path of progression, but then it kind of is obvious because
Is
it's
it
somewhat linear in that way.
is it screen to screen or scrolling screen?
Um, so not it's not really either. It kind of the whole world is generated before you already, and so you just move through, and then your camera will pan over, but
That's what
it's
I mean.
not
So the
like
the camera moves with
but
you.
it's not a separate screen. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like
But
Metroid where you.
sometimes it doesn't.
Okay.
But sometimes it doesn't. Right? Sometimes it will just change your perspective and it'll rotate.
Oh.
Right. Like
So
it's
it's
really it's interesting. It's like if you so one of the parts you walk in and you're approaching this giant gate. And as you approach the gate, you can't go forward because there's a bunch of dead bodies and there's no means of going through the gate. So as you step in either direction, all of a sudden the camera will pan 90 degrees right to left or left to right, depending on which way you went, and you will see a different direction that you could go in either of the sides. And so that's how it creates depth in its world. There are things to be gained by exploring. So some of those orbs that you get to progress your skill tree, you have to explore paths that are not the critical path to find it. The problem is sometimes you can't necessarily figure out if you're on the critical path until all of a sudden you drop out and there's no going backwards. So the FOMO really gets you, and that's hard progress in most cases.
Do you think that the lack of a map is a hindrance or a boon?
I think the lack of a map performs in the exact same way that Expedition 33 does, where it encourages exploration without overwhelming you, without giving away all of its secrets. Me as a completionist in that way, someone who really likes to explore the extent of everything that I can, I couldn't because I found myself on the critical path more than once unintentionally, and to the point where I couldn't go back.
Hmm.
And while that bothered me, at the same time, I there's a skill component to how combat progresses, so you can't miss anything critical. You are just going to have to get better at the combat to progress.
Sure.
So you're not punished for not exploring, you're very much rewarded for exploring, but you could probably play through the entire game, at least up until where I got to, on the critical path, and not ever feel like you missed anything of note.
Fair enough. What makes this stand out over any other? Obviously, it's not quite a Metroidvania per se, but like any other
It is not.
side-scrolling. Like, what makes it stand out to you other than the Hindu mythology, or is it the Hindu mythology that makes it stand out to you?
It is very much that. It's the way that the storytelling is. It's the honestly the beautiful art direction relative to everything in the background and the scenery. So like this world that you're progressing through as you go through becomes progressively more grandiose and ornate, and it's really really pretty. Honestly, it's I don't know, and I didn't investigate this ahead of time, and I guess let me do that now. Didn't answer me. I am. Oh wow, yeah, okay. So Nodding Heads Games is in fact an Indian studio, and you can tell the care that they put into this in the way that I didn't want to assume that they were an Indian studio. That's why I took a second just now to look it up. But it, it becomes very obvious because only somebody who has that attachment to the location would put as much love into the crafting and detail of the location as they seem to have done.
I mean, yeah, I think that matters. That's important. It's the same thing that goes um, into
Quite
books.
obscure.
Just I mean, honestly, any media, but in books, there's something called own voice, which
Hmm.
is basically you want like if they don't, whatever, it's not a huge deal. Some people probably think it would be. But when you're reading a book from a character's perspective, you would like, for specifically main characters, you'd like the author of the book to be able to relate to whatever story it is they're telling. So if you have a book with a black protagonist, you would like your author to be black so they can write it from a realistic perspective. Obviously, people are capable of doing their research, looking into things, figuring out like and doing so respectfully, but it's hard to beat firsthand experience when it comes to life experiences like that. So it's awesome that this Indian studio is using what I'm assuming is their expertise and their experience to create something that matters to them. Is there anything that stood out to you negative wise that maybe you go, I've seen this done better, or this could be done better, or I'm not as interested in trying that, like a skill path where you're like, yeah, no, I'm not touching that. Anything that like of that sort.
I mean, sure, always, right? I could. Were there things about combat that I would have liked to have been like tighter, neater, and cleaner? Absolutely. Would I have liked there to be? Would I have liked the platforming to be a bit tighter? Absolutely. That got a little frustrating at times. Um, would I have liked the? So okay, of the weapons that I got, the bow and the spear. Weirdly enough, I ended up using the bow more because I could make more mistakes with the bow while keeping my distance. Whereas the comboing, I felt like the spear didn't have enough weight behind it to have any knockback or disrupt enemy attacks. So more often than not, I'm trying to do something to an enemy, and they hit me with just a regular attack, completely stun lock me out of my animation, and then I have to regroup or whatever and hope that I don't die. Which, to be fair, small girl versus army of demons, that kind of makes some sense. But from somebody who's played, innumerable melee based, action or character RPGs at this point, there's definitely things I would have preferred be different, but I can't necessarily sit here and say that I would want them to change the entirety of their development cycle to change those things, simply because I prefer my experience with other things. I got the impression with this game that it was made exactly how they wanted to make it, and that was it.
Who would you say this game is for?
So I think this is a pretty good in between game for somebody who is newer into video games, but got, I don't know, who thought that games like Journey was boring because not enough
Mm,
happened.
okay.
Um, so I think it's a good in between for me from a game like Journey for sure to, let's say, probably an in between that and a Metroidvania, because it wasn't
Okay.
really a Metroidvania, but in terms of like mechanics, um, agency with interaction at the world, I'd probably put it about there. It it's hard to say because there's also other difficulty settings. I obviously play on the standard difficulty as I usually do because I want the experience that the developers wanted the game to be.
Makes
Um,
sense.
but there was an easier setting that I could have played on, and according to how long to beat, I mean the game should only take somewhere between 5 and 7 hours, and
Ooh.
I put 10 into it. So I mean, it is what it is. Um, Perhaps if I had played it on the lowest difficulty, that would not have been the case. But that's okay. It is what it is. I suspect that it probably I get the feeling that the easier setting is probably significantly easier in terms of combat, because combat was definitely where more time was spent.
And as someone who has were to have a very busy 9 to 5, how is it with how? What is the put down and pickup level? PDPU level.
We'll work on that. Um, it might be a little hard, and I say that only because you might remember what you are doing, but if you want the breadth and extent of the lore, unless you have some degree of familiarity with Hindu lore, a lot of that might be lost onto you. But I mean, the game itself is linear enough that you can probably pick it down and put it up and just keep going, and eventually enough things will happen that you'll remember that, oh yeah, I'm here to save my brother. Um, there may be some mechanics that you forget and they don't really remind you, but you'll figure it out. Um, but if you're somebody who really wants to put the time and intention into the lore itself, you might struggle some with
Fair
that,
enough.
despite the game being as short as it is.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm always down to explore new mythologies and lores and because it's just fascinating to get a glimpse into other cultures. Like,
I'll put it to you this way, for you specifically. The way that you play games, especially games like this, I believe you would easily beat it in a day.
that's not fair to say. I mean, I
It
probably,
is,
but
because you'd play it on the lower difficulty setting,
heck yeah.
and you would just go. And eventually the things that you would come across in the course of just going would make you forget about the things that you may have missed.
Okay, don't act like
So
I
you
don't
would just
explore everything.
go. You would
I
just
explore.
go.
You know
Uh-huh.
I explore.
Yeah.
I I explore.
Yeah.
Just because I don't open
I
every
I
mound in
suspect
Borderlands.
I suspect you'd beat it in a day.
Probably.
I believe you'd be on the 5 end of that time spectrum.
I'd still explore everything that I could find. I do. We've talked about this. We'll finish games. You'll finish with like 30 more hours, but we'll still have the same exploration percentage. I don't know what it is. I don't know what to tell you.
Hmm. I bet you'd probably beat it in a day.
He's so hateful.
So if you needed that game that was just a day, like in between something that you wanted to like wait for, or if you knew you were gonna have a day off before a game came out,
You're
that'd be
talking
the
to.
one.
I can beat a lot of things in a day because you're talking to somebody who beat Spider-Man 1 in a day
Yeah, that's not okay.
with 75% completion of the entirety of the game. So once again, not like I didn't explore stuff, I found 70% of everything the game had to offer and 100% of the story. I don't know what to tell you.
Not okay.
And that was on the regular difficulty. That wasn't even on easy mode.
Not okay.
Don't know what to tell you. But I did not beat my game of the week in a day. I have actually been very excited to talk about my game because it is wildly unique. I played The Alters by 11-Bit Studios. One thing that you may know them for is Moonlighter, which was one of Darren's games of the week. And it is a survival, which, let me tell you now, let me preface this by saying the moment I see survival in a game that's not survival horror, i.e., Resident Evil, stuff like that. I don't want to say Silent Hill because Silent Hill is psychological. But the moment I see like survival in terms of like crafting and gathering, I'm done. I'm checked out. If I open a YouTube trailer for a game and I open the description and it says a new upcoming survival no, click out of the video, I'm done because I know that I have tried many of them, never stuck with me. That might have changed. This game is a survival space base building exploration game. A la mixture of No Man's Sky and Fallout Shelter. With a bit of a twist on it. So the game starts with the main character giving narration about how his whole life has led him to this point, which matters. And I'll explain why in a bit. The main character's name is Jan, spelled Jan, and you start by crash landing on this alien planet. And you were supposed to have landed on this planet with your crew, but when you get out of your shuttle, you find out that all of your crew is dead. And the mysterious part is that they were all in shuttles, like drop capsules. And when you like go to their capsule, it says on the outside like it's supposed to have like a meter that says like they're alive or their condition. They all say dead, but the main character points out like how because none of their capsules were damaged on in the exterior. So technically speaking, they should be fine, but they're not. So you navigate through all these, seeing all your people that didn't make it, and when you get to this mobile base, which is this giant tire with like when you think Fallout Shelter, it's all the rooms that are connected, or XCOM if anybody's played XCOM, which a lot of people have. You see a giant tire with all these rooms in the center, and you get there, and up on the screen it says Day 1 with like this giant boom that pops up behind it, giving it some gravitas. So you get in this base, and the navigating the base is 2D. Like you go left to right, you can get in the elevator, go to different floors. Leaving the base turns it into third person over the shoulder. But let's stick with the base for a second. So you go into this base and you go into it's known as the mobile base because it's a giant tire, which matters. And you go into the communication room and you reach out to this unknown entity. It's like this static screen with this silhouette, and this voice is just speaking nonsense to you with some occasional words coming through. And it gives you a warning that says you're in the lethal proximity of something. And you're like, what am I in the lethal proximity of? Turns out, You're in the lethal proximity of this galaxy's sun, and the sun is basically getting closer to the planet that you're on. If it gets close enough, the radiation is going to murk you. So you have to figure out, how do I get away from this thing? So you rest, and day 2 begins. And you have to start gathering materials. So you go to the elevator, leave your base, and that's when it goes to over the person, third shoulder, right bumper sprints. I think it was left bumper pulls up a radio menu, and your first job is to go out and mine for minerals. Which normally, one of the reasons I hate survival games is because that's just boring to me, just going up to different things and let me pick it up or whatever. But this game, you go up to a mineral and it fast forwards time because you have a certain amount of energy. So you hold down X on the Xbox and it fast forwards time, and so you start drilling or mining this mineral. And these minerals that you mine are how you build rooms and create things in the workshop. So you need these materials naturally. So you gather materials, and as you're going around, you see that there are these points where you see like an image of clearly what's supposed to be gear, and one of them is a hook, and you can't access it. So you have to build it, which is one of the reasons why you're getting materials. So you're going around this area, and you get to this point where things get really, really blurry, and it's very, very bizarre. So you find this mineral or this element, and you go up to it, and as you start drilling and mining it, your character, you see these like after shadows of your character, like just doing weird different moves as you're mining this weird element. You finish, and you go on about your business, gather all the materials that you can with the energy you have, go back to base, and you contact the mother base Earth again, and you find out that you have discovered, or you found a deposit of something called rupidium, spelled rapid, I-U-M, rupidium. And it turns out that as you're going through these documents, that is the reason that you came to this planet, was to find this rupidium, because it is an element that is known as the time-traveling element. So what it does is it emits radiation. This is from the game. It emits radiation that transfers raw energy into the mitochondria and projects matter into versions of its future self in a matter of hours as opposed to years. So basically, fast forwards the cells in the body. It's science. Don't ask. I don't know. It's science fiction.
Wouldn't that mean you're getting older?
Yes. Yes, it does. Hence the time-traveling element. So you take this deposit back to base, and the entity from Earth tells you to test it. And you're like, how do I do that? Because they want to make sure it's really rupidium. And so you get enough minerals to build a room in your base called the womb. So you go down to the womb, and you use the rupidium, and using that, you create a lamb. And you name the lamb Molly. For those, Darren, could you explain why that's funny to the listeners who don't know?
Keep going.
For those who don't know, we successfully cloned a sheep, and the first ever cloned sheep was named Dolly. So in this game, you create a lamb, you name it Molly. You know, jokes. So you create this lamb, and what I did for the next like 30 minutes after this point is I had something I needed to be doing, and I said, bump that. So I went into my command room, and I just rearranged my entire base to make it so that I could navigate it how I want. Because you can navigate the base in full. It's just 2D. Because I believe in XCOM, when you do it, I don't think you're navigating through the base. I think it's just like, I want to go to this room and do this. I want to go to this room and do this. This one, you navigate your character through the base, through the elevators, through the rooms. And I created a base that felt really, really good to navigate, and it was fun because the base became my thing. It made sense to me. Like, I had my kitchen and my captain's quarters and the dormitory near each other because sleeping quarters naturally are going to be near the kitchen. I had my research and workshop and command room all near each other. So, like, I organized it how it made sense to me. So, you eventually create you create a scanner that lets you find organic deposits. And so the way it works is you put these probes into the ground, and anything in between these probes lets you see, like, x-ray the ground, basically, like see underground, and you have to do that to find these deposits. And when you find these deposits, you can build basically a mining machine, and then you create these pylons that connect it to your base so you can get this organic deposit, basically this fuel that lets you do a bunch of different things. And what was really nice is when you built this machine, it acted as a fast travel point so that you didn't have to manually run everywhere. So you build a mining machine and you press A on it and you can fast travel back to base immediately. It's really nice to feel that reward of, like, I'm exploring this planet, but I'm not punished by going further out. I can build fast travel points for myself to be able to navigate it quickly. And the two areas that I got to were pretty small. I was nowhere near overwhelmed by the areas I had to explore. It was perfectly sized to the point where I felt like I was being rewarded for exploration and really venturing into this planet, but it wasn't like I was sitting there like just overwhelmed with choice in which direction I should go. I got to everything that I could. So, we haven't even gotten to the main part of the game. The game is called The Altars, right? So, you get all the materials. I fully explored the first area. I found all the deposits, got all the organic material. I got everything from this first area. So naturally, it's time to move on away from the sun. So you go to the base and you go to the command room and try and start your ship. And it breaks. Your character's not a technician. Your character's not a mechanic. Your character is straight up scientist, basically. So you're like, I don't know what to do. So you go down to the mechanic room and you do some things and you fix it. You go to start it again, breaks down again. You do it a third time and your guy's like, I'm stuck and I'm alone and I don't know what to do. So you go to the call room, you call your base, and they're like, hey, we want you to try something.
Are you going to
So,
use your sweet ass element as a fuel source?
nope.
Oh, that's a shame.
You go to the quantum computer
Oh,
and they
yes, of
tell
course.
you to do something. And when you go to it, you access the mind drive. I think it's called mind drive. And basically, you access all of your character's memories, like their entire timeline of memories, and all these memories are in the shapes of neurons, naturally. So you get to learn about this character that you are by literally going through all the major points of their life up until this point. So you get to learn about Jan and how he got to the point where he is, and it's really cool to have that background knowledge of your character. But here's the issue. You're still not a technician. You're still not a mechanic. So what they do is they tell you, hey, use that rupidium you found. And I want you to go to the quantum computer, and I want you to pick a point in your life, and I want you to create a copy of yourself. So you go to this quantum computer, and in the tutorial you only have one option, but you go to a point in your life, and the point in your life that you go to is your character is having a fight with his dad. And at this point in the Jan that you are, he ran away. Ran away from home. And then that's his whole branching after that. I think it was when he was 19, ran away from home. I think went to college and did all this other stuff to become what he is now. When you get to that point in the quantum computer, you can choose to branch off and decide to stay after this fight. And when you decide to stay, that creates a whole other branching timeline where his sequence of events in life created a technician. So you use the rupidium to create a copy of yourself after this branching life that he had, and he's made in the womb. Congratulations, you now have a copy of yourself. That's a technician, or an alter of yourself. That's a technician. So he's made, and you talk to him, and there's this whole dialogue, this whole existential dialogue of this dude who's like, you made me. I had this whole life, and you made me because you're stuck on this planet, and now we're stuck together. That's what you did. You ripped me out of this other life that I knew to help you. And so there's this whole existential thing of like, he's like, so you ripped me out of my life, and he's like, actually no. He's like, basically, you ripped me out of my old life, and then the one that you're controlling is like, well, actually, you're a copy of me. And it's like, how do you explain that to somebody that like they're not their own person, they're you made them. And so it gets into this whole thing. And so you move on, he technicians his way through, you have to find common ground, and you eventually get the mobile base moving. You go to a new area to explore. Once again, not that big. It is perfectly sized to feel like you're exploring, get to use your new tools and gadgets, and then it opens up, and you can go to multiple points. You can make a doctor, and the doctor will help heal radiation sickness in the infirmary faster. You can make I'm blanking on the other one that I made. I can't remember what he was. A scientist. You can make a scientist version of yourself that lets you complete research, and research is how you expand your base and make it bigger, or how you research new things that make your materials and gadgets work better. So you truly are free form, given liberty to make the altars of yourself in whatever order you want to fit the play style that you have, to then explore more efficiently, explore better, all while making this base and figuring out how the heck you're gonna get back home. And what was crazy is it took me like an hour to get through the first area where I made the first altar. And after you made the first altar and you had this, I think it was after you had the fight with this altar, title card hits. It was an hour after I started the game where the first title card hit. And what's cool is that all of the altars you make physically look different based on like what their life choices were.
Hmm.
It's so interesting.
It's like Detroit become human, but you are both Detroit and human.
Oh my gosh. What if Detroit became a human? You're so right.
David Cage, did you make this?
I don't know. Probably not. But it was so interesting to just listen to the anger that your altar had, because what happens is you talk to your altars and they need different things from you. And your dialogue choices, what will happen is certain dialogue choices will make little like staticky clouds appear next to them and tell you how your answers are affecting them. So like some of my answers made my altar feel less gloomy or less anxious. Some of my answers fueled their anxiety and made them feel nervous. And so your conversations with your altar matter because it affects how they work. It affects how well they're eating. It impacts everything that they're doing. So you have to be mindful of your choices in dialogue too.
I have those conversations with myself all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
They just
Usually increases the anxiety. That's 9 out of 10.
as you do.
Oh man. Okay. So like point of game is just to get back to Earth, yeah?
It's the pretty much yes, like because the reason you were sent there is for this element that you found. But the issue is that that was when you had a team. So you get here, whole team's dead. Obviously, your objective is now, hey, I gotta get home. But you talk to this disembodied voice from this government, this governmental body, who's like, yeah, I know you're in a dire situation, but you found the thing you were looking for, so maybe you keep searching for that, and then maybe we'll bring you home.
Hmm.
Fun times.
Love love a reliable narrator. All right. Um, music?
Space
Anything
exploration.
anything noteworthy?
As far as music, nothing that stood out
Mm,
to me, which I do think has its own place in the testament of a game soundtrack, because the point of a game soundtrack is to be the background.
sure.
And so it
Okay.
fit exactly what it needed to.
So, in a lot of ways, it doesn't sound it's obviously very different, don't get me wrong. But it sounds like a very similar, more active concept of something like Citizen Sleeper.
I would really say no, because it plays differently because you're in full control. It's because in Citizen
Like I
Sleeper
said,
it was
more
like,
active. Yeah,
um, but Citizen Sleeper was also inspired by tabletop
that's
games
true.
because your dice like determined everything you did, and it was a visual novel with role playing. This game is more exploration, um, than it is anything else, because like you have direct control over character, obviously, but it's more about like discovering this place that you're in. I mean, I guess in the same thing as like you're trying to escape. You're trying to, in Citizen Sleeper, you're trying to get off the eye and whatnot. Like, yeah, sure, that's totally fair. And futuristic in space, absolutely. Um, but this game, we got to come up with a name. But I would say the PDPU, put down pickup level, is is really high, because your goal, get off the planet, and every altar that you've made, you have like a log of like how they're feeling, where they're working. You can assign your altars to different rooms, so you have a room where a workshop where you have to make different like radiation filters for your ship. And normally, when you queue those up, you'd have to go in there, you'd have to hold A, it would pass time, all that stuff. But as you make altars, you can assign them to these places so that it's passively happening, so that way you don't have to worry about it. So there's more management to it than Citizen Sleeper had. Because I would say Citizen Sleeper is story focused. It's a visual novel.
Sure.
This game, it is exploration focused. With there's a story, but your story is to get off the planet.
Hmm. Interesting.
Very fun.
I mean,
Very fun times.
it doesn't sound bad. It doesn't sound like something I would like lose my mind over to play, but the narrative sounds compelling.
It
It feels
was.
like, you know what? It feels like it would make a really good show.
I'm sure there's been a show similar to this, like with a similar concept. I don't watch TV. I am not the one to ask about that, but I mean I think
Not
that's
either.
fair. I'm sure there's
But
something
it does
similar.
the concept feels like it would carry over really well to television.
You would need.
Which I don't mean as a knock on the art form that is video games, of course, because I think video games don't always need to be compared to cinema or television, which they are often, and they're allowed to be standalone in their own art form. But that being said, I simply think that the narrative would also
Sure.
probably lend itself well to something episodic in that way.
James McAvoy would have a field day.
Oh,
Because, in all
oh.
honesty, the movie or the show, it'd be one guy. It'd be one guy.
Well, and whoever the voice from Earth is.
Yeah. There are a couple
Hmm.
other people. Like, you eventually meet a scientist who tells you what to do. You have the love interest, and there's a whole other story there. So, like,
Hmm.
there's compelling stuff to explore to figure out, like, what is Rapidium? Why what is Earth's plan with it? Like, why does this shady governmental body want me to do it so bad rather than have my life be saved? So like, yeah, there's definitely um, secondary and tertiary stuff to figure out. But your main goal, get out of there alive. That's all you have to do.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, so it sounds like you're interested in the narrative, but not necessarily playing it, which is fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that's about
Um,
right.
and
You know what I? You know what I am interested in playing though.
is it Borderlands 4?
It is. It's Borderlands 4. I've
What?
seen some content creators who I followed for a while now in the Borderlands world since Borderlands 2. Um, Posted some like they got to play a set amount of time
Yeah.
of like the playable beta test version of Borderlands 4 and the stuff that they've uploaded. The potential for build diversity on the two Vault Hunters that they showed is crazy. Like I think
Ooh.
one of the Vault Hunters had like 113 skills or something like that
What is
that you
the
could spec points into.
what is it normally?
Less, significantly less. Borderlands 3 ended up after the season pass 2 came out. They gave it the fourth skill tree. Um, you were looking at
Three skill trees. What, like 10
seven,
skills in each? 15 skills in each?
probably 7 rows. Um, Average of 2, so probably 14. So
Oh wow.
yeah, so like 56 skills. So double. 3 skill trees as of now, multiple capstone skills, but different slots. There's an augment slot. Like this, it seems like it's going to be very diverse in terms of the way that you go about playing things. They've made the characters that they showed hybrids, it seems, of things that people loved in the past.
I feel like if there was a game to give you build variety, like yeah, game like loot droppers are the games. Those are the games that do it because that creates your replayability. Like Diablo is a replayable game because there's so many builds that you can create that you need weapons to synergize with. So you have to go and farm and get those weapons to get your perfect build to have fun. Like granted, you want your in between to be fun. In
Right.
Borderlands, in my experience of playing, am I a super fan? No, I just enjoy Borderlands for what it is, and like you have that with Borderlands. The shooty looty is
Mm-hmm.
that's a great combination that other companies have tried to do, and it doesn't feel like it's done it as well.
Definitely not. Um,
Like Destiny, Outriders.
well, Destiny, I think, is its own beast in a lot of ways. Because what Destiny didn't really try to be Borderlands, and it did a lot of things different and better than Borderlands, but worse in other ways. But that's, I mean, obviously a matter of perspective. But while I'm really excited to play Borderlands 4, do you know who wouldn't be excited to play Borderlands 4?
I don't.
That would be anyone who bought the collector's edition. And I say that because obviously you'd think, well, if I'm willing to spend $150 on the collector's edition of Borderlands 4, I'm really excited to play it. But joke's on you, you don't get the game.
Now, to be fair, to be fair, that is specifically the GameStop edition of the game.
Yes, which as far as I know is the only collector's edition I've seen is through GameStop.
Right.
But my problem is that means someone from 2K and or Gearbox greenlit that, which is
Well, then you have the
wild.
$130 Super Deluxe or whatever.
So, if you recall, when we first started talking about game prices and, back when this was potentially an $80 game and I was talking, the deluxe and the super badass versions of the game, potentially each being $30 higher in cost than the previous,
Yeah.
I was 100% correct about that.
I
That
think
each additional version of the game was going to cost $30 more than the previous.
I think
What I
that
will say,
is what.
the two versions above the base game, assuming, and this is a tremendous assumption, that the story DLC expansions are as good as they used to be. Um, that's a lot of added value to the game. For example, I mean, it's each one. Like let's take Borderlands 3, for example, just because it's the freshest in the mind. You had four main story DLCs included with season pass, right? So you had the Handsome Jackpot, you had Bounty of Blood, you had um, Love Gun and Tentacles, and then you had the Krieg's Fantastic Fustercluck. With the exception of the Handsome Jackpot and Krieg, so I guess half of them, Krieg's and Handsome Jackpot, you were probably going to get another 10 hours or so of content each. Um, Love Gun and Tentacles and Bounty of Blood, you were probably getting probably 15 each, but also like much better weaponry. So between those four DLC, we'll say what we will about the story quality because that's honestly a whole topic I have for another time. Um, that's another 50 hours of content for plausibly $30. So less than $1 an hour of additional content to the game. Uh, it seems as though with Borderlands 4's the inferences you can make based on the deluxe and the super deluxe versions, um, it seems like they are going to more of how Borderlands 2 used their content release schedule, where you had the four, but then you potentially had like Headhunter. That's the last. Well, I guess pre-sequel was the last, but the last time that we had other Vault Hunters that were added after the fact,
Yeah,
and those tend to be really fun people to play as.
I love
So
Gage.
I mean, that's effectively, yeah, Gage Krieg was amazing too. Um, you had Aurelia and Timothy and pre-sequel, so I mean, those were both great characters to play as. But what each one of those does is each one of those potentially adds in another playthrough, including post game, which is where a lot of the fun of Borderlands comes in. So I mean, I am morally opposed in so many ways to a video game costing $130. With how much content you will eventually get, it will eventually probably be worth it. Probably, hopefully,
I
probably.
think the reason I take issue with it is honestly purely the naming convention is they're so confusing. Like that it's the same thing that a lot of people have with graphics cards and
Mm.
or CPUs, right? Where you get like the AMD Ryzen XD emo like what are we doing with all these numbers? Like just AMD Z1, AMD Z, like I get there's different things, but it's so confusing. And I feel like Borderlands is going down that same path when little Agatha wants to buy Borderlands 4 for her grandson. He's like, "Grandma, I want Borderlands 4." And she's like, "Okay." And so she goes to the store and sees three different tiers and she's like, I don't know which one he wants." And so it's just confusing. Why do we need three different versions? Just release a regular?
They've always done that.
You don't have to like it though. I don't have
I
to
mean,
like it.
sure, but at this point, I mean, they've been doing it since they've been doing it for a long time. And so at this point, if you're on the fourth entry of numbered mainline Borderlands games, you already know what you're looking at, which is partially how I could predict that each one was going to subsequently cost $30 more than the previous. I will say that I will probably end up getting the highest tier, simply so that I don't have to pay any more money for the game later.
So are we
I will
looking at
also
if
say that if it ends up the same as Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, where I bought, I believe, the second tier of the game. and each one of their content, their DLCs that were released, was effectively you paid like $1 a minute for that content.
Yeah.
I I know that Wonderlands was a side project. I know it was made during the lockdown. I know that it was predominantly a remote project for many people, but it sucked.
Now, if you buy them piecemeal, are you looking at like $40 per
Piecemeal in terms of like
the
each
season pass?
content
Like, yeah,
expansion. So I don't know. They haven't announced what each DLC
because
might end up costing. Each DLC might end up costing $10 on its own, possibly 15. In which case then it's already more viable to just get the higher version, unless they also then release a season pass. Season pass to be $30, so then you're just paying the difference there, but you won't get access to any of the other like cosmetic things or whatever.
that's just
Um,
I don't
the
like.
inclusion of the vault cards, then each one of the additional vault hunters, I believe, was another $10 too. The headhunter packs, I believe, were $5 to $8 or so.
I don't like this direction.
Um,
I'll be. I know it's brave, but
See,
like I
the problem is, that's what they did with Borderlands 2, which was masterfully successful for them.
I know.
And the content was still pretty good then.
As,
So, I mean, it's
even if the
it's
content
it's
is
clear to
good,
see
like
formulaically they're going back to how Borderlands 2 was, because that's what people have asked for.
we've
If
been.
they fail to deliver that product, I don't think it is absurd to say this could be the last Borderlands game.
We've been spoiled by such good complete DLCs over the past like what 10 to 15 years. When the heck did Witcher 3 come out? 2000, like 10 years. We've
Oh,
been so
yeah.
spoiled for the past like 10 years with the Witcher 3 expansions, and then obviously Cyberpunk 2077 had its release, but that's a whole thing. But then Phantom Liberty, which is its own thing, and there have been so many expansions that have been their own thing.
Well, I mean, let's go farther back than that. Let's go to Oblivion, right?
Shivering Isles is its own island. Like we DLC used to be expansion packs. Sims had expansion packs, which were it added a whole other game worth of content to it.
Let's not talk about The Sims. That's a bad
That's
example
why I
now.
said
Do
back
you
then.
know?
Back
Do you
I
know?
know, I know.
Do you know?
Back then, I'm talking Sims 1 and 2. Sims 1 and 2, they had straight up expansions to the point where on PS2, it was a whole other game. Sims Pets was a whole other game that you could buy. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the piecemeal DLC. Like I've never been a fan of it. Like I get it. Game development, you haven't made those things yet because they start like 3/4 of the way through development, so you can't just make it and put it in. Like I get it. But like the piecemeal of like, I don't know. I've never been a fan of that.
It would be $1,000 to buy The Sims 4 and all of its content.
Yeah, I know. It's too much. I didn't say I like that either. I was talking about
Thousand,
Windows
thousand.
98 Sims.
But at least as far as Borderlands goes, it's usually their main DLCs are produced by other studios. So we do get to see other creative hands. Now the problem is that is both a bane as much as it's a boon. And so you get this crazy disparity between them. I mean, the Hammerlock DLC from Borderlands 2 sucked. The Torg DLC from Borderlands 2 sucked. But Tiny Tina's Attack on Dragon Keep is largely considered one of the best they've ever done.
Spawned its own game.
Borderlands, the pre-sequel as a whole game, sucked.
Yeah,
The Claptastic Voyage is one of their best DLCs, if not arguably their best made.
I forget most things from prequel, to be honest.
Good,
Most
good,
things.
because thus far with how the direction they took Borderlands 3, none of the stuff that they alluded to in the prequel has yet to. It might matter in 4, but it has yet to matter. They did not make any of the events of prequel matter in 4 or in 3 at all. At all. At all. At all. At all. At all.
All right, so
But
I don't
anyway,
want to make this the Borderlands podcast.
oh, I'd be good for
I
that.
know, I know you
Um,
would be. But
but
last thing before we go is I was headed to somewhere today in my car, and I was talking to Darren, and both of us are lamenting the search for the Switch 2. And I don't know. I will say I was wrong about how the Switch 2 was gonna like I knew it was gonna launch well, but I did not expect the Switch 2 to be in the state that it's in, of being the highest, the fastest selling, not highest, the fastest selling console um, of all time. And so the search for one for Darren, because I haven't really been searching, has proven unfruitful. So Darren,
same, same.
I've been
I
even I've been even trying to help him get one. Like, I've been going to, like, when I've had a moment of free time, I've been like, "Hey, yo, Target in this area says they might have one," and then he looks it up seconds after I send it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, no, it's marked as gone now."
yeah, no, I actually went into a Best Buy nearby and was told that they actually had gotten a pretty substantial restock, but that there were people who'd come in with like a family and then a bunch of cousins, and they couldn't prove because they were doing only one per household. But they couldn't prove that those people all came in together because they technically all walked in separately because they staggered their entrance. And pretty much, I think he said 2 families bought out almost their entire restock of Switch 2s. And so then you go and look and you see Walmart's reselling page where they're going for, 1100 US dollars, which is just absurd.
Scalpers
Um,
need to.
they need some
That's
crazy reality check. Like I've seen some, which I honestly more than once have contemplated just pulling the trigger on, that were like just the base Switch, not with Mario Kart, for like 550. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to give you another $100, but I could at least I could give myself moral wiggle room on that one. Some of these people wanting 700 plus for a $450 console just need to find their crevices infested with fleas.
it's yeah
Various
it's
crevices,
I
various biting insects.
I haven't been on top of console sales for not not until not until this current gen, because PS4 I just got the One X. I just got Switch. I didn't get until later, like down the line after it already come out. But like I feel like PS5, the this current generation has been, and I guess going forward now, have been terrible for scalping and people just trying to reset. It's ridiculous. But we are gonna call it there. Next episode should be an interesting one,
Mm-hmm.
because I am going to be doing. I was incorrect, Darren. I talked to Darren earlier and thought that this was Akira Toriyama's, like, his last project, but Dragon Ball Daima, I believe this is like his last. But Sandland is my game of the week next week, and it is one of Akira Toriyama's last projects. For those who don't know, Akira Toriyama is the legendary creator of Dragon Ball
Rest
Z,
in
and
peace.
worked on things like a big major part of Dragon Quest and things of that sort. So absolutely legendary creator. And so Sandland is an open world action RPG, apparently, that he was involved in by ILCA or ILCA. And they are known for developing One Piece Odyssey, which I'm getting to a point where I actually can play that game. And they are known for having work loaned out to them and developing Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
Two okay games. And I say that with like the most moderate, tepid response imaginable. Because like Diamond and Pearl are most people's favorite generation, and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl were okay.
Fair enough. We'll see if that extends to Sandland. Darren, what are you doing?
Yes, I will be playing what I am going to go ahead and just we're gonna slot this into my Mount Rushmore of some of the worst game titles I've ever heard. It's like so okay, so the game is Fist, which apparently is an acronym, forged in Shadow Torch. I feel like some guy just sat down and got okay, forged in. Yeah, yeah, let's come up with it. And then just like had a fit of the giggles or something of the like and just I just need two more nouns, two more nouns, two more nouns. Fish swim in the dark sea, shadow. Don't like I don't know. I don't know how you can create the mental gymnastics to come up with shadow torch. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life other than undiscovered infinites. And but I'm hoping that this game is better than its name. It was developed by T Games, that's TI Games, who is responsible for another title known as Oriental Stars. I've never heard of it. And it was published by Billy, which is easily the greatest thing you've said all day.
So,
And so I just take a second, take a deep breath, reflect, and then just say Billy, and try really hard not to smile. It's just if just the name of your publisher can bring a smile to your face, here's hoping that the just absurdity of the name of the game is not enough to wipe the Billy smile from your face.
thank you for listening. Uh, this has been a blast. I always love getting to talk about games. If you're still here, please make sure that you are following, subscribed, leave reviews, leave suggestions, leave feedback. We're always listening, always looking out for it. Social medias are all at the bottom. Convince Me Gaming, Convince Me Podcast, Convince Me Media. You'll find us. With that said,
Billy. Are
I
you convinced yet?